The first time I realized my wife might be lying to me, she was standing in our kitchen holding a glass of wine and smiling, like she'd just won an argument I didn't remember having. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked. "Like what?" "Like I did something." I laughed because honestly I thought it was ridiculous. "You're paranoid." She rolled her eyes. "No, you're being weird." That was my wife, basically. If I questioned anything, somehow I became the problem. If she came home late, I was being controlling. If I asked where she'd been, I was insecure. If I noticed she was spending more time on her phone, I was imagining things. And if I ever suggested she might be keeping something from me, she would look at me like I had personally offended her ancestors. We had been married for 8 years, no kids. We lived in a nice suburb outside Chicago, had a mortgage that made me question every financial decision I'd ever made, 2 cars, a golden retriever who was convinced he was a human, and the kind of life that looked pretty damn stable from the outside. My wife traveled constantly for work. She was an executive for a company that handled commercial real estate, so she was always flying somewhere, meeting clients, touring properties, attending conferences, staying in hotels that had tiny shampoo bottles and giant prices. About 2 years before everything fell apart, her company started using a private transportation service for executives. That was how the driver entered our lives. His name was Mark. Mid-40s, clean-cut, polite, former Marine according to my wife, and apparently the greatest driver to ever operate a black SUV. "Mark knows every airport trick," she'd tell me. "Mark knows which restaurants are actually good. Mark knows a shortcut around downtown. Mark says traffic is going to be terrible tomorrow." At first, I didn't care. Why would I? My wife had a driver because her company paid for one. If someone wanted to sit in traffic for 3 hours so she could answer emails in the back seat, more power to them. Then the trips became more frequent. A business trip to New York turned into 3 days instead of 2. A conference in Dallas suddenly required an extra night because of a dinner with clients. A property inspection in Michigan became an overnight stay, even though Michigan wasn't exactly the other side of the planet. And Mark was always there. Airport, hotel, meeting, restaurant, airport again. Same driver. Every time. I actually joked about it once. "Does this guy sleep?" She looked up from her phone. "Who?" "Mark." She stared at me for half a second too long. Then she laughed. "Oh my God! Are you jealous of my driver?" "I'm jealous of anybody who gets paid to drive while listening to podcasts." She threw a napkin at me. I thought nothing of it. That was the stupid part. I didn't notice the little things because I trusted my wife. When you've been married for 8 years, you don't walk around your own house thinking you're living inside a detective novel. You assume the person sleeping next to you isn't secretly building an entirely different life behind your back. But little things started changing. She became protective of her phone. Not just private, protective. If she got a text, she'd turn the screen down. If I walked into the room while she was texting, she'd lock it. Once I asked who she was talking to. "Work." "Who?" "Jesus, why does it matter?" "I was just asking." "Well, don't." That was new. She also started dressing differently for work trips. Nothing outrageous, just more effort. New dresses, new perfume. Hair done before leaving for the airport. One morning, I watched her standing in front of the bedroom mirror, trying on 3 different jackets. "You're going to a property inspection, right?" "Yes." "You look like you're going to a cocktail party." She turned around. "Is that supposed to be an insult?" "No, you look great." "Then don't make comments." And she walked out. I stood there holding my coffee, wondering what the hell had just happened. The biggest change, though, was the way she talked about Mark. It wasn't what she said, it was what she didn't say. She stopped calling him the driver. He became Mark, then our driver, then eventually just he. He said we should leave at 6. He knows a better route. He thinks the weather is going to get bad. I remember sitting at dinner one Friday night while she told me about a trip to Indianapolis. She was laughing about something Mark had said during the drive. I looked at her. "What?" "Nothing. You're doing it again." "Doing what?" "Looking at me. I have eyes. I'm allowed to use them." She slammed her fork onto the plate. "Can you just stop?" I stared at her. Stop what?" "Interrogating me. I asked you one question." "You're always asking questions." And that's when I noticed something that bothered me more than the anger. She wasn't angry because I had accused her of cheating. I hadn't accused her of anything. She was angry because somehow she seemed terrified I might. I let it go. I wish I hadn't. Because over the next few weeks, things got stranger. Her work trips increased. Her explanations got thinner. And Mark's name kept appearing in conversations where it didn't belong. Then one Tuesday morning, my wife told me she was leaving for a 3-day trip. She kissed me on the cheek, grabbed her suitcase, and headed for the front door. I was half asleep on the couch. "Love you," I said. She stopped, for just a second. Then she turned around and smiled. "Love you too." The door closed. I remember hearing her SUV start in the driveway. I remember thinking absolutely nothing was wrong, and that's the part that still bothers me. Because by that point, something was very, very wrong. I just hadn't found it yet. 3 days later, my wife came home at 10:47 on a Saturday night, and the first thing she did was walk past me like I was a piece of furniture. I was sitting on the couch, watching the Cubs game with a beer in my hand. And I remember looking at the clock because she'd told me she'd be home around 8. Not midnight, not whenever. 8. I had even ordered Thai food because she texted me from the airport saying she was starving. By the time she walked through the door, the food had been sitting in the refrigerator for hours. "You're late," I said. She dropped her purse on the kitchen counter. "Flight was delayed." I muted the TV. "Your flight." She looked at me. "What? You said you were driving back with Mark." Her expression changed so quickly I almost missed it. Almost. "I never said that." "Yes, you did." "No, I didn't." I sat there for a second. "You literally texted me yesterday." She pulled her phone out. "Show me." That caught me completely off guard. "What?" "Show me the text." I didn't have it. I'd deleted it because I had a habit of cleaning out old messages. Dumb, I know, but I'd read it. I remembered it. She had said, "Mark is picking me up from the airport tomorrow. We'll probably be back around 8. I told her that. She shrugged. "Well, then, I changed my plans." "You could have told me." "I didn't realize I needed permission." "I didn't say you needed permission." "You're acting like I did something wrong." There it was again. That move. Take a completely ordinary question, turn it into an accusation, then make me defend myself for asking it. I rubbed my forehead. "I'm not trying to fight with you." "Then stop." "Stop what?" "Whatever this is." I almost laughed. "I'm asking why you got home 3 hours later than you said you would." "And I told you." "No, you told me your flight was delayed. Those aren't the same thing." She stared at me. Then she picked up her purse. "You know what? I'm exhausted." "Okay." "I don't want to do this tonight." "Okay. Can you please just leave me alone?" I looked back at the TV. "Sure." She went upstairs. 10 minutes later, I heard the shower running. I sat there staring at the muted television, feeling like an idiot. And then my phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Hey man, you don't know me, but I think you should take a closer look at your wife's trips." I read it 3 times. My first thought was spam. My second thought was some lunatic trying to cause trouble. My third thought was Mark. I immediately hated myself for thinking it. I typed, "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, the person replied, "Someone who knows something you don't." I stared at the screen. About what? No answer. I waited. Nothing. I sent another message. "Who is this?" Still nothing. I went upstairs. My wife was in the bathroom, and her suitcase was open on the bedroom floor. She had taken out most of her clothes, but one thing was sitting beside the suitcase that I'd never seen before. A hotel key card. I picked it up. It was from a hotel in downtown Indianapolis. I knew she'd been in Indianapolis, but she'd told me she stayed at the Marriott near the convention center. This card was from a completely different hotel. I stood there holding it when she walked out of the bathroom. She froze. "What are you doing?" I held up the card. "What hotel is this?" Her face went blank. Then she laughed. Actually laughed. "Are you serious?" "Yeah." "You're going through my stuff now?" "It was sitting on the floor." "So you picked it up?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because it's a hotel key." She walked toward me and snatched it out of my hand. "It's old." "From this trip?" "No." "Then why was it in your suitcase?" "I don't know." "You don't know?" "No." I watched her put the card into the side pocket of her purse. "That's convenient." Her eyes narrowed. What exactly are you accusing me of? Nothing. You're accusing me of something. I just asked about a hotel. You're acting insane. I almost snapped back. Instead, I said, "Where did you stay?" She didn't answer. "Where did you stay?" "The Marriott." "Then why do you have a key from another hotel?" "I told you. I don't know." She turned away. I looked at her, and suddenly I remembered something. The text. Someone had warned me. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning she acted completely normal. That somehow made everything worse. She made coffee. She fed the dog. She complained about traffic. She even asked me if I wanted eggs. It was like the argument hadn't happened. I watched her move around the kitchen and thought, this woman knows something I don't. I just didn't know what. Then, around noon, she left. "Where are you going?" "Target." "For what?" She stopped at the door. "Do I need to give you an itinerary now?" "No." "Good." She left. I waited 10 minutes. Then I grabbed my keys. I wasn't proud of what I did next. I followed her, not because I had proof, not because I knew where she was going, because for the first time in 8 years, I didn't trust the person I was married to. She drove toward the interstate. I kept my distance. She wasn't going to Target. She drove for almost 40 minutes before turning into a quiet business park. I pulled into a parking lot across the street and watched her SUV disappear around a row of buildings. I sat there thinking this was insane. Maybe she really was meeting someone from work. Maybe she had a client. Maybe she was dropping something off. Maybe I had officially become the paranoid husband she'd been accusing me of being. Then I saw a black SUV pull into the lot. My stomach dropped. I knew that vehicle. It was Mark's. I watched him get out. He looked around. Then my wife stepped out of her SUV. They didn't shake hands. They didn't talk like co-workers. She walked directly toward him. And when Mark opened his arms, my wife didn't hesitate. She walked straight into them. I couldn't hear what they said. I couldn't hear anything through the windshield, but I could see enough. Her hands went around his waist. His hands went around her back. Then she looked up at him. And she kissed him. I don't mean a quick kiss. I mean the kind of kiss that makes every lie you've ever believed collapse at once. I felt my entire body go cold. My hand was still wrapped around the steering wheel, but I couldn't feel my fingers. I wanted to get out. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive straight through the fence. Instead, I just sat there, because sometimes your brain refuses to accept what your eyes are showing it. Then Mark opened the passenger door of his SUV. My wife got inside. He walked around to the driver's side, and they drove away together. I sat there for another 5 minutes. Then my phone buzzed. It was the same unknown number. One message. "You still think she's going to Target?" I stared at it. And for the first time in my marriage, I realized the affair wasn't the only thing I knew nothing about. I didn't follow them. That's the part people are probably going to judge me for, and honestly, I get it. If you're sitting there thinking, "Dude, you had him. Follow the damn car," you're right. In a movie, that's exactly what happens. The guy floors it, follows them through 3 neighborhoods, catches every secret on camera, and somehow still has the mental clarity to remember the license plate. I wasn't in a movie. I was sitting in my Ford Explorer in a business park parking lot, staring through the windshield like somebody had unplugged my brain. My wife had just kissed another man, not some random guy, her driver, the guy whose name I'd heard at our dinner table dozens of times, the guy I'd joked about, the guy I'd trusted because apparently I was an idiot with a mortgage. I finally drove home. I don't remember much about the drive. I remember stopping at a red light and realizing I had been sitting there after the light turned green. I remember some guy behind me laying on his horn. I remember lifting my hand like, yeah, I know, even though he couldn't possibly know what the hell was happening inside my head. When I got home, I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. I didn't want beer. I didn't want whiskey. I wanted water. That was how bad it was. I stood there looking at our refrigerator. There were photographs held up by magnets, a picture from our anniversary in Nashville. One of us standing beside a giant Christmas tree. A stupid photo of the dog wearing a birthday hat that my wife had bought from Target. I looked at all of it and thought, how much of my life is real? Then my phone buzzed again. Same number. Don't confront her yet. I stared at that message. I typed, "Who are you?" The reply came almost immediately. "Someone who has seen this before." I wrote, "How do you know my wife?" No response. I tried calling. The number went straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. I sat down at the kitchen table. For about 20 minutes, I just stared at my phone. Then I did something I probably should have done months earlier. I started looking at the calendar. Her business trips, the hotel dates, the weekends she'd suddenly had plans, the nights she'd said she was working late. I pulled up our shared credit card account. At first there was nothing obvious. Restaurants, gas, hotels, airline tickets, normal stuff. Then I noticed something. There were hotel charges on dates when she'd told me she was staying somewhere else. I went back, then back again. There were six different nights over the previous 8 months, different hotels, same cities, and one thing connected nearly all of them. They were close to places where her company had meetings. I leaned back in the chair. "Okay," I said out loud. The dog looked at me. "Okay." Apparently, talking to a golden retriever was now part of my investigative process. I kept digging. There were restaurant charges, too. Not expensive enough to scream affair, just 2 dinners. $180, $142, 2 people. Always 2 people. And then I saw a charge from a hotel bar. The date was 3 months earlier. My wife had told me she'd gone straight to bed that night because she had an early meeting. I remembered it because I'd called her. She had whispered, "I'm exhausted." I had said, "Go to sleep." She had said, "Love you." I stared at that charge until the numbers blurred. Then I noticed something else. The transaction description included the last 4 digits of a card, not hers. I checked our accounts. It wasn't mine either. I took a screenshot. Then I stopped. I had this horrible feeling that if I kept digging, there wouldn't be anything left to save, and I wasn't ready for that. At around 6 that evening, I heard her SUV pull into the driveway. I closed the laptop. She walked through the front door carrying a shopping bag. "Hey." I looked at her. "Hey," she smiled. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" I hadn't even realized the lights were off. "Forgot." She walked into the kitchen. "Did you eat?" "No. I got groceries." She held up the bag. I watched her pull out strawberries, yogurt, some fancy crackers she liked, and a bottle of wine. She was humming. Actually humming. I thought about the kiss. I thought about Mark's hands on her. I thought about the message telling me not to confront her, and then she looked at me. "What?" "Nothing," she smiled. "You're weird today." "I've had a weird day." "What happened?" I looked directly into her eyes. "I followed you." She froze. It lasted maybe half a second. Then she laughed. "You did what?" "I followed you." She put the wine bottle down. "Where?" "Business Park." Her face changed. Not guilt, anger. Pure, immediate anger. "What the hell is wrong with you?" "I saw you." "Saw me doing what?" "With Mark." She stared at me. Then she started laughing again. It wasn't a normal laugh. It was sharp and nervous, almost offended. "You followed me to spy on me?" "You were kissing him." "No, I wasn't." I just stared at her. "You were kissing him." "You're lying." I actually laughed. "You think I'm lying?" "Yes. I watched you." "You misunderstood what you saw." "What exactly did I misunderstand?" "He was upset." I blinked. "What?" "He was upset and I was comforting him. By kissing him." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" She crossed her arms. "You don't trust me." "No." The word came out before I could stop it. She looked stunned. I had never said that to her before. She pointed at me. "This is exactly what I've been talking about." "What?" "Your jealousy." I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're cheating on me with the guy who drives you around and you're calling me jealous? You have no proof. I watched you kiss him. That doesn't prove anything." I stared at her. "Are you hearing yourself?" She grabbed her purse. "I can't have this conversation." "Where are you going?" "Out." "It's 7 o'clock. I need space." "You're not leaving." She spun around. "Excuse me." I immediately regretted the wording. "You're right. Go." She stood there for a second. Then she picked up her keys. Before she walked out, she turned around and said something I'll never forget. "You're going to regret treating me like a criminal." The door slammed. I sat there alone, and for the first time I understood that she wasn't planning to tell me the truth. She was planning to make me doubt myself. That night I didn't sleep. At 2:13 in the morning, my phone buzzed. Another message from the unknown number. This time, there was a photo attached. I opened it. It was my wife, standing outside a hotel, with Mark, And this time, they weren't kissing. They were holding hands. Underneath the photo was one sentence: "You need to know who else is involved." I stared at those words for a long time. Then another message appeared: "Because Mark isn't the person who started this." I felt my stomach drop, and suddenly the affair didn't look like a secret relationship anymore. It looked like a setup. I read that last message at least 20 times. "Because Mark isn't the person who started this." What the hell was that supposed to mean? I typed, "Started what?" Nothing. "Who are you?" Nothing. "Who else is involved?" Still nothing. By 3 in the morning, I was sitting at the kitchen table with every light in the house turned on, looking like I was preparing for a police interrogation. The dog was asleep under the table, completely relaxed, because apparently somebody in that house still had emotional stability. My wife still wasn't home. That bothered me almost as much as the cheating. Not because I wanted to control where she went. At that point, honestly, she could have driven to Mexico for all I cared. It was the confidence. She knew I had seen her. She knew I had confronted her. And instead of coming home and talking to me, she disappeared. That told me something. She had somewhere else to go, or someone else. At 4:06, I heard the garage door. I didn't move. Her footsteps came through the hallway. She stopped when she saw me sitting in the kitchen. "You're still awake?" "Yeah." She looked tired, but not the normal kind of tired. Her mascara was slightly smudged. Her hair was different, not messy from sleep. More like she'd fixed it once and then given up. "Where were you?" She put her keys down. "I told you, I needed space." "For 9 hours? Jesus Christ. Where were you?" She walked toward the refrigerator. "I don't have to report my movements to you." "No, you don't." "Good. But if we're married and you disappear after I catch you kissing another man, I might ask." She slammed the refrigerator door. "There you go again." "What?" "Making everything dramatic." I actually stood up. "Dramatic?" "Yeah. You cheated on me." "You don't know that. I saw you. You saw one moment and invented an entire relationship." I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because if I hadn't laughed, I might have said something I couldn't take back. "One moment?" She looked at me. I picked up my phone. "I have pictures." Her face went completely still. That was the first real reaction I'd seen. "What pictures?" "Of you and Mark." "Who took them?" I stopped. She didn't ask what was in the pictures. She asked who took them. That was interesting. "Why?" "Because I want to know." "Why?" Her voice got louder. "Because somebody is stalking me." I held up a hand. "Lower your voice." "Don't tell me to lower my voice." "I'm not fighting with you." "Yes, you are." "No, you are." That made her angrier. She started pacing around the kitchen. "You know what this is? This is insane. Some creep sends you random pictures and suddenly you're accusing me of having an affair." "Random pictures?" "Yes. They knew about the business park." Silence. "They knew you were with Mark." She looked away. "They could have followed me." "Like I did?" Her eyes snapped back to mine. "Exactly like you did." There it was. The counterattack. No denial that someone knew. No explanation for why that person knew. Just attack me. I took a breath. "Where were you tonight?" She shook her head. "No." "No?" "No, I'm not doing this." She walked toward the hallway. I stepped in front of her. Not touching her, not threatening her, just standing there. She stopped. "Move. Answer one question." I said, "Move." "Were you with Mark?" Her face changed, and this time she didn't scream. She smiled. It was cold, almost amused. "You really want to know?" My stomach tightened. "Yes." She leaned closer. "Maybe I was." For a second, neither of us moved. Then I said, "Okay." She looked surprised. "Okay?" "Yeah, that's it." "What do you want me to do?" "I don't know. Yell. I've spent the last 8 hours realizing I married someone who can lie directly to my face. I'm a little low on energy." Her smile disappeared. I walked back to the kitchen table. She stood there staring at me. "You're unbelievable." "No, I'm just done playing whatever game this is." She picked up her purse. "Fine. Fine." She went upstairs. I heard drawers opening, closet doors, suitcase wheels. I sat there. Then I heard her come back down. She had packed a bag. "Where are you going?" Hotel. I nodded. Okay. That's all you have to say? Yep. She stared at me like she wanted me to beg. I didn't. That seemed to make her furious. You don't care. I looked at her. You just spent the night somewhere else, came home at 4 in the morning, admitted you might have been with the guy I caught you kissing, and now you're upset because I don't care? She swallowed. I didn't say I was with him. You didn't have to. She walked out. The garage door closed. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Good. Don't stop her. I typed. Are you watching my house? No answer. Then another message. Check the joint account at 8 a.m. That was it. I didn't sleep after that. At 7:45, I made coffee. At 7:53, I opened my laptop. At 7:58, I logged into our joint checking account. At exactly 8 o'clock, nothing happened. I waited. 8:01, nothing, 8:02. Then the page refreshed, and I saw it. A pending transfer, $38,000 from our joint savings. I stared at the screen, then I refreshed again. Still there. The transfer destination was a bank account I didn't recognize. I immediately called the bank. The woman on the phone asked me if I wanted to cancel the transfer. Yes. Was this transfer authorized by another account holder? I looked at the screen. Yes. Do you have their permission to cancel it? I laughed. No. There was a pause. Sir, my wife is trying to move $38,000. Okay, I understand. She didn't understand. Nobody could understand how stupid I felt sitting there. After a few minutes, she told me the transfer could be flagged and temporarily frozen while they reviewed the situation. I thanked her. Then I hung up. $38,000? That wasn't grocery money. That wasn't a new purse. That was planning. My wife wasn't just cheating. She was preparing for something. I opened our account history, and suddenly I started seeing things I'd ignored before. Cash withdrawals, small transfers, gift cards, money disappearing in amounts small enough that I never questioned them. 500 here, 700 there. 1,000 for work expenses. Over the previous year, nearly $12,000 had moved out of our accounts in ways I couldn't explain. Then my phone rang. Her name appeared on the screen. I answered. Hello? What did you do? I smiled. There it was. She knew. What are you talking about? Don't play stupid with me. I leaned back. That's funny. Why is the transfer frozen? What transfer? She screamed. You son of a bitch! I closed my eyes. And I swear to God, even after everything I'd seen, hearing her panic about the money hurt more than hearing her lie about Mark. Because now I knew exactly what mattered to her. Not me, not our marriage, the money. Were you planning to tell me? I asked. Silence. Tell you what? I laughed. Okay. Don't okay me. Where were you sending $38,000? She didn't answer. I asked again. Silence. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. It isn't your money. I sat up. What? You heard me. We're married. Not for much longer. The line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone. Not for much longer. That wasn't a threat made in anger. She'd already decided. And suddenly I understood something else. Maybe the affair wasn't falling apart because I caught her. Maybe I had caught her right before she planned to leave anyway. Then my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. One final message. Now ask yourself why she suddenly needs $38,000. I looked at the frozen transfer. Then at the bank account number. And for the first time, I had an answer. I knew exactly where I needed to go next. The problem was, I wasn't the only one looking. I spent the next hour doing something I never thought I'd have to do in my own marriage. I started building a financial crime scene out of our kitchen table. I had bank statements spread across the counter, my laptop open, 3 cups of coffee going cold, and a legal pad where I'd written down every transaction that didn't make sense. The dog was sitting beside me, staring at the papers, like he was waiting for me to explain why the humans had suddenly become idiots. I checked the $38,000 transfer again. Still frozen. I checked the smaller withdrawals, $12,000 over roughly a year. Then I noticed a pattern. The money wasn't going to Mark, at least not directly. Most of it had gone through a business account, a company name I recognized but couldn't place. Westbridge Consulting, LLC. I stared at the name for maybe 30 seconds before it clicked. Westbridge was a company my wife had mentioned once at dinner. She'd said they helped executives with relocation and transition services. At the time, I had no reason to care. Now I couldn't stop staring at it. I searched the name online. The company had a basic website, one of those websites that looked like somebody's nephew had built it over a weekend. 3 employees listed, a phone number, an office address, and one name at the bottom of the page that made my stomach turn. Mark. Not listed as an employee, listed as a consultant. I leaned back in my chair. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Suddenly, the private driver wasn't just a driver. He had a side business connected to the company my wife worked for. That explained why they knew each other. It explained the trips. It explained the meetings. It explained why he was always around. It didn't explain the kissing. That part was still painfully simple, but it meant the relationship had more layers than I'd imagined. I called a lawyer, not because I was ready to divorce her. I wasn't. I hadn't even said the word out loud yet. I called because I needed someone who understood what happened to money when a marriage started collapsing. The attorney's assistant took down some basic information and scheduled a consultation for Monday morning. Then she gave me one piece of advice that sounded almost insultingly obvious. Don't move money, don't threaten anybody, don't destroy anything, and don't confront my wife about evidence I hadn't preserved. I wrote every word down. When I hung up, I took screenshots of the bank statements, the transfer, the hotel charges, the messages, everything. I backed them up twice. One copy went to a new email account, another went onto a flash drive. I wasn't trying to become some paranoid private investigator. I was trying to make sure that when my wife eventually told somebody I was crazy, there was a record proving I wasn't. At 11:18 that morning, she came home. She didn't knock, she still had a key, obviously, and walked into the house carrying a Starbucks cup and wearing sunglasses even though it was cloudy. She looked completely composed. That's what got me. I had spent the morning discovering that thousands of dollars had disappeared and that my wife was sleeping with another man, while she apparently had time to stop for a latte. She took off her sunglasses. "Are you going to be weird all day?" she asked. I looked at her. "Probably." She rolled her eyes and walked toward the kitchen. "I need my passport." I frowned. "Why?" "Because I'm traveling." "Where?" "New York." "When?" "Tomorrow." I actually laughed. "You didn't tell me about a trip." "I don't need to tell you everything." She opened a drawer. "Where's my passport?" I said. "I don't know." She turned around. "You moved it." "I didn't touch it." "Yes, you did." "Why would I move your passport?" She stared at me for several seconds. Then she said, "Because you're angry." That sentence was so ridiculous I didn't know what to do with it. She started opening cabinets, then drawers, then she went upstairs. I followed her because at that point normal marital boundaries had officially left the building. She went into our bedroom and started throwing clothes into a suitcase. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Packing." "For New York?" "Yes." "For how long?" "I don't know." "Who's going?" She stopped folding a blouse and looked at me. "My colleagues." "Which colleagues?" "Why are you doing this?" "Because I'm asking a question." "No, you're interrogating me." "Okay, who's going?" She slammed the suitcase shut. "You're obsessed." I didn't answer. She pointed at me. "This is why people leave you." That one landed, not because I believed it, because it was deliberately cruel. She knew exactly where to put the knife. I looked at her and said, "You know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe people leave because they get tired of being lied to." She grabbed her purse and stormed out of the bedroom. Then she stopped in the hallway. "By the way," she said, "Mark isn't my lover." I stared at her. "You kissed him." "He kissed me." "You kissed him back." I was shocked. I almost smiled. "You were shocked for about 15 seconds. She ignored that. "There's something you don't understand." "What?" "Mark and I have been trying to help someone." "Who?" She looked at me. And for the first time since this started, she seemed genuinely afraid. "You?" I didn't move. "What?" She swallowed. "We were trying to protect you." I laughed because there was no other response available. "From what?" She shook her head. "I can't tell you." "You're having an affair with another man, stealing money from our account, and now you're telling me you were protecting me?" "I didn't steal anything." "Then where's the money going?" She looked toward the front door. "I have to go." "Where?" She didn't answer. I stepped closer. "Where's the money going?" She grabbed her keys. "Ask the person who's texting you." That stopped me. How do you know about the texts? She didn't answer. Who is it? She opened the door. Ask him. Him? She looked over her shoulder. Then she said, You really have no idea what's happening, do you? The door slammed. I stood there for a long time. Then I checked my phone. No new messages. Nothing. I called the unknown number again. This time someone answered, a man's voice. Hello? I froze. Who is this? You need to stop asking questions over the phone. Who are you? You don't know me. You know my wife. Silence. Then the man said, Yes. Do you know Mark? Yes. My stomach tightened. Are you the one who sent me the pictures? Yes. Why? Another silence. Then he said, Because I thought you deserved to know before she destroyed you financially. I gripped the phone tighter. What does that mean? She isn't the only person involved. Then tell me who is. I can't. Why not? Because if I tell you everything right now, you're going to confront her. I already confronted her. You haven't confronted the right person. I stared at the wall. What does that mean? The man took a breath. Then he said, Your wife has been meeting Mark for over a year. But the money didn't start disappearing because of Mark. Then where did it go? It went to someone she trusts. Who? The man didn't answer. Instead, he said something that made the entire room feel colder. Look at the beneficiary on your life insurance policy. I stopped breathing for a second. My life insurance? Check it. The call ended. I stood in the hallway holding my phone. My wife had never asked me about my life insurance, at least not directly. But 3 months earlier, she'd insisted we update all our financial documents because she said we were getting older and needed to be responsible. I had laughed at the time. I told her we weren't old. She'd smiled and said, You'll understand someday. I walked into my office, opened the file cabinet, pulled out the policy. And when I saw the beneficiary listed on the document, I realized the affair might be the least dangerous lie my wife had told me. I sat in my Explorer with both hands on the steering wheel and watched my wife stand on the porch beside her boss, like this was some kind of bizarre neighborhood intervention. Her boss had one hand in his coat pocket and the other hanging at his side. My wife wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking at the ground. Mark was standing behind them, near the front door, and for some reason that bothered me more than anything else. 3 people. 3 people who apparently knew something about my life that I didn't. I rolled down the window. What the hell is this? My wife stepped forward. Come inside. No? Her boss looked at her, then at me. We need to talk privately. You can talk from the porch. My wife said, Please. That word was so strange coming from her that I almost didn't recognize it. She had spent the last 48 hours screaming at me, insulting me, lying to me, and telling me I was crazy. Now she was standing there asking me to come inside like she was scared I might disappear. I got out of the Explorer but didn't walk toward them. Why is he here? I pointed at her boss. And why is Mark here? Nobody answered. I looked at my wife. You said you weren't safe. Then you told me to come home. So tell me what's happening. Her boss finally spoke. Your wife has been trying to protect you from a financial investigation. I stared at him. A financial investigation into what? Your company. I actually laughed. I don't own a company. He shook his head. Your wife knows what I'm talking about. I looked at her. She wouldn't meet my eyes. What company? I asked. She whispered, The one you used to work for. That sentence hit me strangely. I had left my old employer 4 years earlier. I worked in operations for a regional logistics company. Nothing glamorous. No secret accounts, no offshore money, no Jason Bourne nonsense. I handled fleet scheduling and vendor contracts. I left after the company got bought out and moved into a completely different industry. What about it? I asked. Her boss said, There was fraud. My stomach tightened. What does that have to do with me? Your name appears on several documents. I looked at my wife. What documents? She finally looked up. Contracts. I laughed again, but this time there was no humor in it. I haven't worked there in 4 years. Her boss nodded. Exactly. He pulled an envelope from his coat and held it out. I didn't take it. What's that? Copies. Copies of what? Invoices, vendor agreements, payment authorizations. I looked at Mark. And he's involved because? Mark said, Because I was hired to investigate where the money went. I stared at him. You're a driver. He gave me a tired smile. I'm a driver because that's the job your wife could explain to you. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. So you two weren't having an affair? Nobody answered immediately. That silence was brutal. Then my wife said, "Not exactly." I closed my eyes. Jesus Christ! Mark looked uncomfortable. There was a relationship. I opened my eyes. What does that mean? My wife snapped. It means I made a mistake. A mistake? I laughed. You spent a year sneaking around with him. It wasn't like that. I watched you kiss him. Because I was scared. That's your explanation? Yes. So you were scared and decided to make out with the guy investigating my old company? She started crying. Actual tears. I wanted to feel sympathy. I didn't. Not yet. Her boss stepped forward. This is exactly why we didn't want you involved. Don't tell me what I can handle. We're trying to keep you from being charged. That stopped me. Charged with what? I asked. He looked at my wife. She nodded. Fraud. I stared at them. You think I committed fraud? No, he said. We think someone used your identity. Who? That's what we're trying to determine. I looked at the envelope. Then why didn't anyone tell me? My wife answered, because every time I got close to the truth, someone warned me to stop. Someone. Anonymous calls, emails, threats. I looked at Mark. And you knew? He nodded. We've been tracking them. For how long? Almost a year. I looked at my wife. And during that year you lied to me about everything. Her face crumpled. I was trying to keep you safe. You could have told me. I couldn't. You could have told me you were scared. I was scared. You could have told me about Mark. She looked at him. I couldn't. Why? She hesitated. Because the person following us knew about him. That sentence made me stop. Following you? Mark nodded. Someone has been watching both of us. I looked around the street. Who? He pointed toward the black sedan beside the house. That's not ours. I turned toward the sedan. The windows were tinted. The engine was off. Nobody was inside. My wife wiped her face and whispered, "It was there when I arrived." Her boss said, "We've seen it twice this week." I looked at him. "And you still brought everyone to my house?" He didn't answer. "That's brilliant." I started walking toward the sedan. Mark grabbed my arm. "Don't!" I pulled away. "Get your hands off me." "I'm serious." "Then tell me what's going on." He looked at the car. "We're not sure who's inside." "Nobody's inside. There was someone 5 minutes ago." I stared at the dark windows. Then suddenly the driver's door opened. We all froze. A man stepped out. He was wearing a dark baseball cap and a gray jacket. He looked at us. Then he reached into the car. I instinctively stepped backward. Mark moved in front of my wife. The man pulled out a phone. He wasn't armed. He wasn't some movie villain. He simply held up the phone and took a picture of us. Then he got back into the sedan. The engine started. Mark ran toward the street, but the car pulled away before he reached it. I watched the taillights disappear around the corner. My wife was crying again. Her boss was on his phone. Mark stood in the road, staring after the car. And I realized something that made me feel sick. The person who had been sending me messages wasn't necessarily trying to help me. They might have been watching me too. I turned to my wife. "Tell me everything." She looked at me. "I will. No more lies. I promise." I shook my head. "Don't promise me anything." She swallowed. "Okay." I looked at Mark. "You too." He nodded. Then I looked at her boss. "And you." He said, "Fair enough." We went inside. My wife sat at the kitchen table. She put both hands around a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. Then she looked at me and said, "The first time Mark and I were together wasn't the night you saw us." I stared at her. "What?" She took a breath. "It happened 8 months ago." I felt my jaw tighten. "So you did cheat?" "Yes." "How many times?" She closed her eyes. "I don't know." That answer hurt more than a number would have. Then she opened her eyes. "But that's not the worst part." I waited. She pushed a folder across the table. Inside was a copy of a contract from my old employer. My name was printed at the bottom. My signature was underneath it, and I knew immediately I had never signed it. She looked at me and whispered, "Someone has been forging your signature for years." I looked at the document, then at her, then back at the signature, and suddenly, the affair wasn't the only thing I needed to survive. I stared at the forged signature until the letters stopped looking like my name and started looking like a threat. That's not my signature. My wife didn't say anything. Her boss leaned forward. We know. No, you don't understand. That's not even close. I pointed at the document. Whoever had signed it had copied my name, but they had done it badly. The handwriting was too neat. My real signature had always been a mess. 3 letters that looked like a medical emergency followed by a line that could have been a heartbeat monitor. My wife used to make fun of it when we signed Christmas cards. That isn't mine, I said again. I know, she whispered. Then why the hell is it on a contract? Because someone wanted it there. Who? Nobody answered. I pushed the folder across the table. Enough. I'm done being the last person in the room who knows what's happening. My wife's boss finally sat down. 4 years ago, after you left your old company, an internal audit found irregular payments to several vendors. At first, it looked like ordinary fraud. Money was being moved through shell companies, invoices were being altered, and payments were being approved using credentials belonging to employees who had already left. And my name? Your credentials were used. I felt my stomach tighten. I changed my passwords when I left. We know. I returned my laptop. We know. So what are you saying? He looked at me. Someone kept using your identity after you left. I stood up. Then call the police. We did. That surprised me. When? Months ago. Why didn't anyone contact me? Because your name was being used as part of an ongoing investigation. I looked at my wife. And you knew? She nodded. How long? She wiped her face. Almost a year. I laughed bitterly. So while I was sitting at home thinking my wife was cheating on me with her driver, you were secretly investigating me. You weren't being investigated, she said. We were investigating whoever was using you. You slept with the investigator. Her face went red. I know. You lied to me. I know. You stole money from our account. I was moving it because I thought someone was watching our finances. That's not an excuse. I know. Her voice broke. And for the first time, she stopped trying to defend herself. That almost made it worse. I sat back down. Tell me everything. She took a deep breath. The first time I met Mark outside of work, I was supposed to be meeting someone from your old company. They had contacted me because they thought you might be involved. I stared at her. What did you say? I told them they were wrong. Why? Because I knew you. I didn't respond. She continued. Then the person who contacted me disappeared. What do you mean disappeared? He stopped answering calls. His email shut down. His apartment was empty. Mark interrupted. We thought he had gone into hiding. Who was he? Daniel Reeves. I recognized the name. Not personally, but from my old company. He was in accounting. Yes. He was fired. Officially, my wife's boss said, he resigned. I looked at him. Those aren't the same thing. No. My wife pushed another document toward me. It was an email printed on paper. The sender was Daniel. The date was 11 months earlier. The message was short. Your husband is being set up. Don't trust anyone inside the company. I read it twice, then a third time. Why didn't you show me this? Because 2 days after I received it, somebody broke into our house. My head snapped up. What? You were out of town. I remembered that trip. I had been in Milwaukee for work. She told me the alarm company had made a mistake. You told me the alarm went off because the dog knocked something over. I lied. I stared at her. What did they take? Nothing. Nothing. They searched. For what? She looked at Mark. He answered. Documents. My skin prickled. What documents? Anything connected to your old company. I leaned back. So somebody broke into our house looking for paperwork, and you never told me. I thought if you knew, you'd investigate. I would have. Exactly. I rubbed my face. You realize that doesn't make me feel better, right? I know. No, you don't. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the street looked completely normal. A kid was riding a bike. Somebody was walking a Labrador. A neighbor was unloading groceries from a Honda Pilot. Normal life. That was the cruelest part. Everything outside still looked normal. My wife said, there is something else. I turned around. She looked terrified. What? The money. I waited. The $12,000 you found wasn't stolen. I laughed. Then what was it? I paid someone. Who? Daniel. I froze. You found him? She nodded. Where? He contacted me. Where is he? He's dead. The room went silent. I stared at her. What? Daniel was killed 6 months ago. I felt the air leave my lungs. How? Car accident. Mark shook his head. We don't believe it was an accident. I looked at him. Why? Because his brakes were cut. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then my phone buzzed. All of us looked at it. Unknown number. One message. Stop digging. I showed them. My wife started crying. Her boss stood up. Mark reached for his phone. I stared at the message. Then something inside me changed. The fear was still there. But underneath it was anger. Not the wild kind, the cold kind, the kind that makes you stop asking whether you're going to fight back and start wondering how. I typed a reply. I'm done being afraid. The response came almost instantly. You should be. Then another message arrived. A photograph. It was my house, taken from across the street. The picture had been taken that morning, while we were sitting inside. I looked at the window, then at the photograph, then at my wife. She whispered, "They're watching us." I shook my head. No. What? I looked at the picture again. They're not just watching us. I zoomed in. The photograph had been taken through the windshield of a car, and reflected in the glass was the person taking it. I could barely see his face, but I recognized the jacket. Gray, dark baseball cap. The same man from the black sedan. Then I noticed something else, a small logo on his jacket, my old company's logo. I looked at my wife's boss. He went pale. That's impossible. Why? Because that logo hasn't been used in 3 years. I stared at the picture, then at the forged contract, then at my wife. And suddenly I understood the biggest lie of all. This wasn't someone using my identity. Someone had been using my identity because they wanted me blamed for something, and whoever was doing it had access to people inside the company. I grabbed my keys. My wife stood. Where are you going? To see my old boss. Her boss shook his head. No. Why? Because he's dead. I stopped. What? He looked at me. He died 2 weeks ago. And that was when my phone buzzed one more time. This message had no words, just an address. I recognized it immediately. It was the address of the hotel where I had seen my wife and Mark holding hands. Underneath it was a single sentence. Come alone, and I'll tell you who she was really meeting. I didn't go to the hotel alone. I know that probably sounds obvious, but at that point I was finally done making decisions based on what my wife, Mark, anonymous strangers, or anybody else told me to do. I called the attorney I'd spoken to earlier and told him everything, the forged contracts, the money, the messages, the dead accountant, the dead former boss, the photograph of my house, the hotel address. He went quiet for a few seconds and then said, "Do not meet whoever sent that message by yourself." I told him I wasn't planning to. He asked where I was. I told him. 20 minutes later, he was sitting across from me in a coffee shop with a folder under his arm and the expression of a man who had just realized his Monday morning was about to become somebody else's disaster. We went to the hotel together, not inside. We parked where we could see the entrance. I didn't tell my wife where I was going. I didn't tell Mark either. For the first time in weeks, I wanted one thing that didn't involve either of them, the truth. Around 15 minutes after we arrived, a man walked out of the lobby, gray jacket, baseball cap, same guy from the photograph. He looked around, spotted my Explorer, and started walking toward us. My attorney immediately said, "Stay in the car." The man stopped when he saw there were 2 of us. Then he laughed. Not a nervous laugh, more like he was impressed. He walked to the driver's window and said, "You brought a lawyer." I lowered the window. "You told me to come alone." "I told you to come. I didn't say you had to come, stupid." He smiled. "Fair enough." I asked, "Who are you?" "Daniel Reeves." I felt like the world stopped. I stared at him. "You're dead." He nodded. That's what they wanted everyone to think. My attorney leaned toward the window. "Are you Daniel Reeves?" "Yes." "Can you prove it?" Daniel reached into his jacket and handed me an old driver's license. The picture was younger, but it was unmistakably him. I looked at the license, then at him. "You let your own family think you were dead?" "My family was never the target." "Then who was?" He looked directly at me. "You." My stomach dropped. Daniel told us he had discovered the fraud inside my old company shortly after I left. Someone had been creating fake vendors, routing money through shell companies, and using former employees' credentials to approve payments. My identity had been selected because I had handled vendor contracts and had left the company before anyone noticed the pattern. Every time auditors traced the paperwork, my name appeared. Every time someone dug deeper, another document with my forged signature appeared. And my wife? Daniel looked away for a moment. She found out. How? Because she saw one of the documents. Then why did she sleep with Mark? Daniel gave me a look I didn't understand. Ask her. I did. She lied. I laughed bitterly. That's not exactly new information. Daniel continued. Mark was working for an outside security firm. Your wife hired him to find me. She hired him? Yes. So they were investigating you. At first. I felt something tighten in my chest. And the affair? Daniel hesitated. Your wife and Mark became involved. That's true. So she cheated? Yes. Then why are you telling me this like it matters? Because it matters to the part you're not seeing. He pulled out his phone. There were photographs, messages, bank transfers, hotel records. I looked through them. My wife had been meeting Mark privately for months. There was no excuse, no misunderstanding, no comforting him, no innocent kiss. They were together. She had lied, repeatedly. But then I saw something I wasn't expecting. One message from Mark to my wife. Don't let him know about the trust yet. Another from my wife. I can't keep lying to him, Mark replied. You have to. If he knows, he'll confront them. I looked at Daniel. Who is them? He didn't answer. Instead, he showed me a bank transfer. The recipient was Westbridge Consulting. But the account belonged to someone else, my wife's boss. I felt my face go numb. You're telling me her boss was stealing the money? Not exactly. Then what? He was helping move it. Why? Because he was being blackmailed. I stared at the screen. By who? Daniel looked at me. Your wife. I almost dropped the phone. No. Yes. That doesn't make sense. It will. Daniel explained that my wife had discovered evidence that her boss was involved in the fraud. Instead of reporting him immediately, she used the information to force him to help her move money and protect me. She created the trust because she believed someone would eventually come after me financially. She moved money because she thought our joint accounts were being watched. She hired Mark because he had private investigation experience, but somewhere along the way, everything got twisted. The investigation became a relationship. The lies became routine. And my wife became so obsessed with controlling the situation that she stopped caring about what it was doing to me. I asked Daniel the question I'd been avoiding. So why was she trying to send $38,000? 'Cause she was going to leave. My chest tightened. For Mark? Daniel shook his head. For herself. I laughed. Of course. She was going to take the money and disappear, so she was planning to abandon me. Yes. And she was going to leave me with the fraud. Daniel nodded. That was the moment something inside me finally broke. Not because she cheated, not because she lied, because she had decided that saving herself was more important than saving me. I looked at my attorney. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Daniel handed me a flash drive. Everything is on here. I looked at it. What do you want from me? Nothing. Then why help me? Because I spent 2 years watching people destroy innocent people to protect themselves. He looked tired. I don't want you to be another one. I took the drive. Then I asked the question that had been sitting in the back of my mind. Who sent me the first message? Daniel looked at me. I did. I stared at him. You were the anonymous number? Yes. Then why did you make me think Mark was the only problem? Because I needed you to start looking. You could have told me the truth. You wouldn't have believed me. I couldn't argue with that. My attorney finally spoke. We need to preserve all of this and get law enforcement involved. Daniel nodded. I already sent copies. To who? Federal investigators. I looked at him. When? Yesterday. My phone buzzed. My wife. I stared at her name. I answered. Where are you? At home. You need to come back. No. Her voice cracked. Please. Why? I know everything is out. I froze. How? I got a call. From who? She started crying. Mark. What did he say? He said they're coming for us. Who? I don't know. I looked at Daniel. He was watching me. My wife whispered, I need you. I closed my eyes. For 8 years those words would have destroyed me. This time they didn't. You should have needed me before you lied to me. She started sobbing. I'm sorry. I said nothing. Then she whispered something that changed the entire situation. I'm pregnant. I froze. There was complete silence on the line. Then I said, we don't have kids. I know. My attorney looked at me. Daniel stopped breathing. I felt my stomach turn. Whose is it? My wife didn't answer. I asked again. Whose baby is it? She whispered 2 words. Mark's. I ended the call. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was going to file for divorce. I didn't cry when she told me the baby was Mark's. I thought I would. I thought that would be the moment everything finally broke open and I'd collapse like some guy in a bad country song, staring at the ceiling and asking God what I did to deserve this. Instead, I felt strangely calm. Not happy, not okay, just calm. Maybe my brain had finally run out of things to process. 8 years of marriage, an affair, forged documents, missing money, a fake death, an investigation, and now a pregnancy that wasn't mine. At some point, your emotions apparently look at the situation and say, yeah, we're going to need to shut down for maintenance. My attorney took the phone from my hand and said, don't call her back. I nodded. Then he said, and don't make any decisions tonight. I looked at him. I already made one, which is, I'm filing for divorce. He didn't argue. He just opened his folder and started writing down what we needed. By the next morning, I had changed the locks. Not because I wanted revenge, because I needed one place in my life where I knew who could walk through the door. I moved the important documents into a safe deposit box. I froze the joint accounts as much as legally possible and followed every instruction my attorney gave me. I didn't empty them. I didn't hide money. I didn't send angry messages. I didn't post anything online. I didn't call Mark. That last one took more discipline than I'd like to admit. I wanted to hear his voice. I wanted to ask him how he could look me in the eye at our house after sleeping with my wife. I wanted to tell him exactly what I thought of him. But my attorney kept repeating the same sentence. Don't give them ammunition. So I didn't. My wife called 37 times that day. Then she sent messages. At first they were angry. You can't lock me out of my own house. Then desperate. Please answer. Then hysterical. You're destroying everything. Then accusing. This is what you always wanted. Then strangely apologetic. I know I messed up. I didn't respond. Around noon, she sent a long message explaining that the pregnancy had happened after she and Mark had emotionally separated from each other, which was such an absurd sentence that I actually laughed. Apparently they had been emotionally separated while still sleeping together. I read the message twice and deleted it. Then another arrived. The baby might not even be his. I stared at that one. 5 minutes later, she sent another. I don't know anything anymore. That was the first honest thing she'd said in months. At 3 that afternoon, my attorney called and told me to come to his office. He had already prepared the divorce filing. I sat across from him while he explained everything in plain English. The affair itself wasn't the complicated part. The financial activity was, the forged documents were, the trust was, the investigation into my former company was. My wife's attempt to move $38,000 could become very important. Her boss was now cooperating with federal investigators. Mark had apparently stopped answering his phone. And Daniel, who everyone believed was dead, had given investigators evidence that tied several people to the fraud. My attorney looked at me and said, "You have 2 separate problems here, your marriage and the investigation. Don't mix them." I nodded. Then he slid the divorce papers across the desk. "If you're certain, sign here." I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. That surprised me. I signed. 8 years of marriage ended with the same stupid pen I had used to sign a mortgage refinance 3 years earlier. There was no dramatic music. Nobody burst through the door. The world didn't stop. A receptionist outside was arguing with someone about a printer. A delivery guy walked past the office carrying a box of toner. Somewhere downtown, people were buying lunch and complaining about parking. And I was sitting there realizing that the woman I'd planned to grow old with had become someone I needed legal paperwork to separate myself from. When I got home, I found Mark standing in my driveway. I stopped the Explorer. He didn't approach the vehicle. He just stood there. I rolled down the window. "What do you want?" He looked exhausted. "I need to talk to you." "No. Please." "No. I owe you an explanation. You owe me about 1,000 explanations." He nodded. "I know." I looked at him. "You're going to be a father." His face changed. "I don't know if I am." I almost laughed. "She told me it's yours." "She told me that too." "What does that mean?" He looked toward the house. "She lied to both of us." I turned off the engine. "Get to the point." Mark rubbed his face. "She wasn't supposed to leave you." I stared at him. "What?" "The plan was to protect you. She was supposed to stay married to you while we figured out who was using your identity." I laughed. "So your plan was to protect me by sleeping with my wife?" "No, 'cause that's exactly what happened." "I know. You knew she was married." "Yes. And you slept with her anyway." "Yes. Then whatever explanation comes next is already garbage." He looked down. "I fell in love with her." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "That's your excuse?" "No." "Good. I don't expect you to forgive me." "I won't." He nodded. Then he said, "But there's something you need to know." I waited. "The pregnancy? What about it?" "The dates don't match." I stared at him. "What do you mean?" "The last time I was with her was 6 weeks before she told me she was pregnant. I felt my stomach tighten. She told me the baby was yours." "I know. And you're saying it might not be." "Yes." I looked at him. "Then whose is it?" "I don't know." Before I could say anything else, a black SUV turned onto the street. Mark looked over his shoulder. His face went pale. "That's them." "Who?" He stepped backward. "The people who started all of this." The SUV slowed. The windows were blacked out. It stopped directly in front of my house. My attorney had told me not to confront anyone. My common sense told me to get inside. Instead, I stayed where I was. The driver's door opened. A woman stepped out. I didn't recognize her. She was maybe in her early 40s, wearing a dark coat and carrying a folder. She looked at me, then at Mark. Then she said my wife's name. "Where is she?" Mark didn't answer. I said, "Who are you?" She looked at me. "My name is Rebecca." She opened the folder. "I worked with Daniel." I frowned. "Daniel's already cooperating with investigators." "I know." She pulled out a photograph. "Then you need to know what he hasn't told you." She handed it to me. I looked down. It was a picture of my wife. But she wasn't with Mark. She was standing beside another man. A man I'd never seen before. On the back of the photograph was a date. 3 weeks before I ever heard Mark's name. Rebecca looked at me. "Your wife didn't start cheating with the driver." I looked up. "She started with someone else." Mark stared at the photograph. He whispered, "No." Rebecca nodded. "And that man is the reason your wife was willing to destroy your marriage." I looked at the picture again. Then I recognized the man's face. Not from my wife's life, from mine. He was the man who had interviewed me for my old job. The man who had recommended me for the position. The man who had signed the paperwork when I was hired. My former boss. The same man everyone had told me was dead. I looked at Rebecca. "You said he was dead." She gave me a grim smile. "He isn't." And then she said the words that made me realize my divorce was only the beginning. "He's the one who forged your signature." The man in the photograph wasn't my former boss. I knew that the second I looked closely. The resemblance was there, but it wasn't him. Same general build, same dark hair, same kind of expensive suit. But the face was wrong. I had spent 3 years working for my former boss. I knew his face better than I knew some of my relatives. I looked at Rebecca. "Who is this?" She took the photograph back. "His name is Richard Cole." "Never heard of him. You were never supposed to." Mark stepped closer. "Rebecca, what are you doing here?" Ending this. She looked at me. "Your wife was involved with Richard before she ever got involved with you." I felt my stomach turn. "How involved?" "Enough." I laughed bitterly. "That's not an answer." "She was meeting him privately. He had access to financial records from your old company. He knew your identity had been compromised. He also knew your wife was investigating." "So he recruited her?" Not exactly. Rebecca looked toward the house. He manipulated her. I shook his head. I'm done with explanations that make her sound innocent. Rebecca nodded. She isn't. That answer surprised me. She lied to you. She cheated on you. She moved money without your knowledge. She manipulated Mark. She manipulated her boss. She even manipulated the investigation. I looked at Mark. And you? He looked ashamed. I let her. I laughed. Great. Rebecca continued. Your wife thought she could control everyone around her. Richard convinced her that if she helped him move certain documents and money, he could make the investigation disappear. And the $38,000? Part of the escape plan. I nodded slowly. So she was going to leave? Yes. With Mark? No. That stopped me. With Richard? Rebecca shook her head. Alone. For some reason, that made more sense than anything else. My wife hadn't chosen Mark. She hadn't chosen me. She had chosen herself, and that was probably the most honest thing she'd done in months. I looked at Mark. Does she know you're here? No. Does she know Rebecca is here? No. Then where is she? Rebecca answered. She went to Richard. I stared at her. When? About an hour ago. I pulled out my phone. 23 missed calls, all from my wife. Then one voicemail. I played it. Her voice was shaking. I know you're angry. I know I've lied to you, but please, please don't give anything to the police yet. I can explain everything. I can fix this, I swear. Then her voice changed. She started crying. Please don't let them find me. The message ended. I looked at Mark. He whispered, She's scared. I shook my head. She should be. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Hello? A man's voice said, You need to listen carefully. Richard? Silence. Then he said, Your wife made a mistake. What mistake? She took something that belongs to me. What? Evidence. I looked at Rebecca. She nodded. Richard continued. If you want your wife alive, bring me the drive. My blood went cold. I didn't answer. He said, You have 2 hours. The call ended. Mark immediately stepped forward. We need to call the police. No. Rebecca looked at me. You're not seriously considering going. I am. My attorney had told me not to do stupid things. This was stupid. Extremely stupid. But there was something I understood now. The affair was over. The marriage was over. The money was over. The only thing left was making sure nobody got hurt. We called the police. We gave them everything. The messages, the recordings, the photographs, the financial documents, the location. And then we waited. 40 minutes later, my wife's location appeared on a tracking application Mark had installed on her phone, months earlier. An abandoned warehouse outside the city. Police moved in, we stayed back. I watched from a distance as officers surrounded the building. Then I saw my wife come out. She was barefoot. Her hair was a mess. She was crying. An officer walked her toward a vehicle. She saw me. She stopped. For a second, we just stared at each other. Then she screamed my name. I didn't move. She pulled away from the officer. Please. I still didn't move. You have to believe me. I looked at her. I believed you for 8 years. She started sobbing. I love you. That sentence used to mean everything. Now it meant almost nothing. You should have thought about that before you decided lying was easier than telling me the truth. She looked toward Mark, then back at me. He used me. I nodded. Maybe. He manipulated me. I believe you. Her face changed. Then forgive me. I shook my head. No. That was the first time I saw her realize there was no argument left. No lie, no explanation, no emotional explosion that could change my mind. The marriage was over. Completely. The police arrested Richard that night. They found the forged documents, financial records, and enough evidence to connect him to the fraud. My wife's boss cooperated. Daniel gave a formal statement. Mark gave one too. And my wife finally told the truth, not because she suddenly became a good person. Because there was nowhere left to hide, she admitted the affair, she admitted the financial transfers, she admitted lying about the trips, she admitted meeting Richard, she admitted helping move documents, and she admitted she had planned to leave me without telling me the truth. The pregnancy was later proven not to be mine. The father was Mark. At least that part of her final confession had been true. The divorce moved forward, and for the first time in months, my life became painfully simple. I was single. I was broke, compared to where I had been. I had a dog who didn't understand why half the furniture disappeared, and I had absolutely no idea what came next. But I was free, and that turned out to be worth more than I understood at the time. The divorce took 7 months. 7 months of paperwork, hearings, financial statements, attorneys, accusations, and more conversations about my marriage than I ever wanted to have. My wife tried everything. First, she wanted reconciliation. Then, she wanted separation. Then she wanted money. Then she wanted sympathy. Then she wanted to blame Mark. Then she wanted to blame Richard. Then she wanted to blame me. At one point, she told my attorney that I had emotionally abandoned her because I didn't spend enough time at home during the final year of our marriage. My attorney read the statement to me. I just stared at him. Did she really write that? Yes, I laughed. I was emotionally abandoned because I trusted her. He didn't laugh. I did. Because at some point you either laugh or you spend the rest of your life angry. The financial investigation eventually cleared my name completely. The forged documents were traced back to Richard. The accounts connected to the fraud were exposed. My former company cooperated with investigators. The missing money was recovered in part. My name was removed from every major document connected to the scheme. And the $38,000, it stayed frozen. My wife had no legal right to take it. That money became part of the divorce settlement. She was furious. "You're taking everything from me." She said that during one of our final meetings. I looked at her. "No," she stared at me. "You're losing the things you were never entitled to." That shut her up. For once, the final hearing was surprisingly ordinary. No screaming, no dramatic confession, no tears. She sat across the room from me wearing a black dress and staring at the floor. I remember looking at her and thinking about the woman I married, the woman who used to steal the blankets, the woman who would dance badly in the kitchen while making pancakes, the woman who once drove 3 hours in a snowstorm because I had forgotten my wallet at a hotel. That woman was real, but she wasn't the woman sitting across from me anymore. Maybe she had changed. Maybe I had simply stopped seeing what had always been there. The judge finalized the divorce. 8 years. Done. Outside the courthouse, my attorney shook my hand. "You made it." I smiled. "Barely." He laughed. "You'll be fine." I believed him. Not immediately, but eventually. Mark's life went in a completely different direction. He lost his driving contract. His relationship with my ex-wife collapsed before the divorce was even finalized. The pregnancy changed everything. They tried to make it work. They didn't, apparently discovering that the woman you were having an affair with had spent a year lying to her husband, and manipulating an investigation wasn't exactly a great foundation for a healthy relationship. Who knew? Richard went to prison. My wife's former boss received a reduced sentence after cooperating with investigators. Daniel survived. That still sounds strange when I say it. The man who had been officially dead was eventually placed under protection while investigators finished the case. I met him once after everything was over. We sat at a diner. He ordered pancakes. I ordered eggs. He looked at me and said, "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For bringing you into this." I shook my head. "You didn't destroy my marriage." He looked down. "No? No." I took a sip of coffee. "She did." He nodded. Then he said something I've never forgotten. "Sometimes the truth doesn't ruin your life. It just reveals what was already broken." I thought about that for a long time. Because he was right. The affair didn't destroy my marriage. The affair revealed that my marriage had already become a place where lying was easier than honesty. My wife didn't suddenly become a stranger. She became someone I finally stopped making excuses for. And that's probably the hardest lesson I've learned. People always talk about trusting your instincts. I used to think that meant catching someone. It doesn't. Sometimes your instincts aren't telling you your spouse is cheating. Sometimes they're telling you something is wrong. And you don't have to know exactly what it is before you take yourself seriously. I ignored the late nights, the strange hotel charges, the phone secrecy, the anger, the way she defended Mark. I ignored all of it because I didn't want to be the paranoid husband. I didn't want to be the guy checking receipts and asking questions. I wanted to trust my wife, and I still believe trust is important. But trust isn't the same thing as blindness. If somebody loves you, asking a reasonable question shouldn't feel like an attack. If your partner gets furious every time you notice something that doesn't make sense, pay attention. Not because anger proves guilt, it doesn't, but because healthy relationships can survive questions. Lies can't. The strangest part is that I don't hate her anymore. I thought I would. For a while I did. I hated her voice. I hated her perfume. I hated the sound of her car pulling into the driveway. I hated that she could walk into a room and make my stomach drop. But eventually, hatred became exhausting. I stopped wanting revenge. I stopped checking her social media. I stopped wondering where she was. I stopped caring whether she regretted it. That was the real victory. Not the divorce, not the money, not proving I was right. Indifference. One morning, about 3 months after the divorce, I was standing in my garage drinking coffee. The dog was asleep beside the workbench. Sunlight was coming through the open garage door. My phone was on the table. No missed calls, no messages, no unknown numbers, nothing. Just silence. And for the first time in a very long time, silence felt good. I looked around the garage. My old Ford Explorer was parked in the driveway. My tools were where I left them. The refrigerator was humming. The dog snored. It was an ordinary morning, and I realized I had spent months trying to get my old life back. I didn't want it anymore. I wanted a new one. About a year after the divorce, I was sitting at a bar with an old friend when he asked me the question everybody eventually asks. "So are you dating?" I took a sip of my beer. "No. Why not?" "Because I'm enjoying not having someone hide a second phone in the house." He laughed. I laughed too, and that was the first time I realized I could finally joke about it without feeling like I was bleeding internally. My life had gotten smaller after the divorce, and somehow that was a good thing. I stopped trying to impress people. I stopped buying things because I thought a successful marriage was supposed to look a certain way. I stopped explaining myself. I started working out again. I fixed things around the house I'd ignored for years. I took the dog on long walks. I reconnected with friends I'd barely seen during my marriage. I even went on a fishing trip with my brother. For 3 days, nobody asked me where I was. Nobody demanded an explanation. Nobody accused me of being jealous. Nobody lied. We sat in a boat at sunrise, drank terrible coffee, and argued about whose fishing technique was worse. It was perfect. Then, one afternoon, I got a letter from my ex-wife. I almost threw it away. Instead, I opened it. She wrote that she was sorry. Not the dramatic apology she'd given me during the divorce. A real one. She admitted she had lied because she was afraid. She admitted she cheated because she wanted something she knew she shouldn't have. She admitted that she'd blame me because taking responsibility was harder. She admitted that she had convinced herself she was protecting me when, in reality, she was protecting herself. And then she wrote something that surprised me. "I know you don't owe me forgiveness." She was right. I didn't. But I forgave her anyway. Not for her, for me. Forgiveness didn't mean I wanted her back. It didn't mean what she did was acceptable. It didn't erase the lies. It didn't make the affair disappear. It simply meant I wasn't going to carry her mistakes around for the rest of my life. I put the letter in a drawer. I never responded. Some endings don't need another conversation. A few months later, I met someone. Nothing dramatic, no fireworks, no mysterious hotel keycards, no black SUVs. She was just a normal woman I met through friends. We went for coffee, then dinner, then another dinner. The first time she left her phone on the table while she went to the bathroom, I looked at it, not because I wanted to snoop, because my brain had been trained to expect secrets. I caught myself. I laughed. When she came back, I told her, "I have some trust issues." She smiled. I figured, "I'm working on it. I can tell." That was it. No screaming, no accusation, no interrogation, just two adults talking. And I realized that was what I had been missing. Not perfection, not some movie version of love, just honesty. That's all I wanted. Looking back, the affair with Mark wasn't even the strangest part of the whole story. The strangest part was how long I kept trying to explain away things that made me uncomfortable. I thought being a good husband meant trusting my wife no matter what. Now I think being a good husband means trusting your partner while also trusting yourself. Those are not the same thing. If I could give one piece of advice to somebody reading this because they're sitting at home wondering if they're crazy, it's this. You are allowed to ask questions. You are allowed to notice patterns. You are allowed to say, "This doesn't feel right." You are allowed to leave when trust is gone. And you don't need to wait until you have a photograph of your spouse kissing somebody in a car. I learned that the hard way. The day I caught my wife with Mark, I thought my life had ended. It hadn't. It was just the day I stopped living somebody else's version of my life. I lost a marriage, I lost money, I lost friendships, I lost the person I thought my wife was, but I got myself back. And honestly, that was worth more than everything I lost. Sometimes people ask me whether I regret not confronting her earlier. Yes, sometimes, but then I remember something. If I had caught her 6 months earlier, I probably would have spent those 6 months begging her to tell me the truth. If I'd caught her 2 years earlier, I might have tried to save the marriage. If I'd never caught her at all, I might still be sitting at that kitchen table, believing every excuse. So maybe the worst day of my life was also the first honest day of it. I still drive past the hotel sometimes. I don't slow down. I don't wonder who's inside. I don't wonder whether she's there. I don't wonder what Mark is doing. I don't wonder if she regrets losing me. I just keep driving. Because that's what moving on actually looked like for me. Not some huge victory, not revenge, not making her jealous, just driving forward without looking in the rearview mirror every 5 seconds. And if there's one thing I know now, it's this. A person can cheat on you, lie to you, manipulate you, steal from you, and make you question your own sanity. But they don't get to decide what happens after you finally see the truth. That part belongs to you. My wife made her choices. Mark made his. Richard made his. I made mine. And mine was simple. I chose myself. For the first time in 8 years, I chose myself.